Hey, welcome back. In this video, it is a good one. It's all about why what's on your plate really matters. We're going to teach you what exactly a whole body reset plate looks like, foods you're really indulging in, and foods you're avoiding. Okay, talk to us first about why a whole foods based plan is so important to intermittent fasting.
So when you eat whole foods, which means really not refined, you're looking at forms of food that are harder to digest. And so when you eat those foods, you basically don't have this insulin spike that runs the risk of you getting hypoglycemia and needing to eat in a couple hours later. So it ensures that you get enough dietary fat and also enough protein while getting some carbohydrates. This is not a carb restricting diet. It's not a keto diet we're trying to do is to make this brand successful for really kind of a lifetime.
You said Whole Foods, and we should probably back up of what exactly does that mean?
So Whole Foods is basically most of the stuff at the grocery store that does not have a barcode on it is going to be whole foods. So when we're looking at fruits and vegetables, that's going to be the majority of your plate. You're also going to be looking at good source animal protein. So when we're looking at eggs, we're going to get organic pastured eggs. When we're looking at chicken, it's going to be organic pastured chicken and then grass-fed beef. But even throwing in potentially some exotic meats, if you're willing to do that, especially when you're out to eat, those tend to be more grass-fed. And so you also want to avoid the farmed type seafood because those have a lot of pesticide runoff. And so wild caught seafood is going to be a great option also.
So we're shopping on the outside of the grocery store. We're avoiding those box and the processed
Yeah.
foods. Tell me the benefits.
So the benefits of doing the whole food based diet is number one, we talked about when it is less refined and then your body needs to process it. It takes a little bit longer to process. So the insulin spikes really are going to be lower. And so it's going to be lower glycemic. The other benefit is that we're eating, garlic and onions and all these other great foods that add flavor to your food, but also add in prebiota. And so that fancy term just means the material that basically ensures that we have enough nesting material for good bacteria to live. The buzzword these days is microbiome.
Oh,
And we want to make sure that the microbiome is supported with good fiber, and that's coming from the vegetables and complex carbohydrates. And also, when we're looking at the microbiome of animals, and this is why it's so important that we get grass fed beef, is because honestly, cows shouldn't be eating Skittles, and a lot of our conventional meat is fed stuff that
Skittles.
oh, yeah, there's a whole report on where they're feeding like the defective Skittles to cows. And so it's not part of their natural microbiome or natural food intake. And so that high sugar state makes their meat different. And it also changes the bacteria that's in their gut, which changes really what we're eating. And that's why it's important on looking at quality and sourcing of food.
Let's talk about the Well Body Reset plate. How should we be structuring our plates? By the way, we do have recipes and instructions that can take the guesswork out of that for you. But as you move forward and if you love to cook, get creative on your own. So
Absolutely.
how should we be breaking this up?
So I think about eating on a dinner plate. So again, we're throwing out this whole eating small portions and eating a little amount. We want to be full. So a dinner size plate, you're going to eat, I call them big girl portion instead of eating like and so part of what I have found is that people these days are so undernourished and then undernourished because the quality of food that they're eating is just highly processed and doesn't have any nutritional value. So when we look at the plate, we're looking for basically quality vegetables, quality fruits, and half of your plate is going to be vegetables. And that's going to be really like your non-starchy vegetables, your greens, your asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, all of those great vegetables that give you great fuel and great antioxidants. A quarter of your plate will be animal protein. And so the protein sources we've talked about, like grass fed beef, looking at maybe exotic meats, maybe looking at wild caught seafood, eggs, any of those things where you actually get the B vitamins and iron that you need to actually get your Krebs cycle, which is how we produce energy in our bodies. It gets that Krebs cycle moving. And so your last, I would say, quarter is kind of split up between fat and carbs. And so I personally like to have a little bit of fruit or something sweet at the end of the meal. As you go to Asian restaurants, you'll see that they usually give you oranges maybe at the end of the meal. So I'm used to that kind of methodology where an eighth of that sliver of that plate is going to be potentially some type of fruit. I like berries mostly. Those tend to be lower glycemic The other eighth will be some type of good dietary fat. Now, this could be built in into, like, let's say we make a delicious curry with full fat coconut milk. It's not going to be like a sliver of it. It just gives you kind of an idea that you do need dietary fat on your plate. But good ideas could be avocado, nuts and seeds. Those provide not only good dietary fat, but they give you omega 3s, which is good for brain function, and then magnesium, which is good for bowel movements and relaxation. So there's a lot of ways that we can use food as medicine that we have really not been utilizing in the standard American diet.
Let's talk about the foods we want to indulge in. In the 80s and 90s, I was very afraid of fat. I bought anything low fat, no fat snack walls. I thought that was great. But now we're being taught very differently.
Yes. So we need to make sure that we have enough fat because fat is really going to give us the precursors for our cell membranes. It gives us precursors for brain function and nerve function. And so DHA, EPA, you hear about these things that they're purposely fortifying in milk so that you are improving brain health. You can get those through fish and you can get them through eggs. So a lot of these things you could actually get, and also like omega 3 sources come from ground flaxseed meal, and you can get them from organic soy, and you can get them from walnuts. So there are non-animal proteins also that carry these good fats.
And your goal with this for us is to get 6 to 9 cups of vegetables a day, which
Absolutely.
if you're switching from a standard American diet, it's a lot.
Yeah. And so my recommendation is 6 to 9 cups because what you're looking at is you need the fiber amount and you really need the antioxidants that are in vegetables. The more colorful they are, the more green and leafy, just variety is what I would recommend. And honestly, it's not that much and I say 6 to 9 cups because if you're eating on a big dinner plate, half of the plate, that's 3 cups. And so you have to throw out the notion of, oh God, for breakfast, like where would I put in vegetables? So if I eat breakfast, my typical breakfast is half the plate is sauteed kale. I have a quarter of the plate is some salmon, like smoked salmon with some capers. I may have like a little bowl of berries and then some avocado. So that's really kind of not a typical breakfast that you would see for a standard American diet. But clearly, when you compare that to like a yogurt with granola and honey, like there's not even a comparison to the nutritional value that you're getting from that type of food rather than doing some of these more convenient foods or clearly like if you're doing toast or muffins or any of the processed carbohydrates that send your sugar reaching.
Are there fruits and vegetables that you want us to avoid on this 28-day Well Body Reset?
Not really. I mean, I think when you're looking at quality vegetables, you're really looking at cruciferous vegetables like we've talked about, broccolis, Brussels sprouts, cabbages, cauliflower. You're looking at asparagus, throw in artichokes, throw in bok choy, try Swiss chard, try some greens that you haven't tried before, but you could also do spinach and you can do kale. You can do a lot of different varieties of vegetables. If you're looking at your starchy vegetables, so like sweet potatoes are very healthy for you. You have to still watch the quantity, but that would count as your carbohydrate portion. And so you just don't want to overdo it. Usually a good rule of thumb, maybe about like a half a cup to no more than a full cup, depending on how big you are and how much demand you need. But really, I wouldn't overindulge in those foods. I would indulge in lots of vegetables and good animal protein and the good dietary fat. I mean, honestly, when we look at the foods that drive our cravings and like, oh, I can't, you open a bag of chips and you can't just have one. I mean, there's some truth to that where they have chemically processed it so that you could eat the entire bag. When was the last time you ate an entire salmon? I mean, like it doesn't happen, right? So when you are actually full and actually filling your body with correct foods that are nutritionally sound, your body takes what it needs and it feels full rather than all these empty calories that just set insulin surging and that doesn't actually fill you up.
Let's talk about foods we're avoiding during this Well Body Reset. You're not going to see any gluten or dairy on the recipes we provided. Tell us why.
So typically, when we look at the reason why gluten is almost always refined. So when we're looking at gluten, it's going to be bread, you're looking at wraps, you're looking at crackers. We already said we're not doing anything pounded to a flour. So gluten is pretty much out. Now, I want to make a huge point that this doesn't mean that we're going gluten free because then lots of people say, oh, well, perfect. I'm going to go buy that fancy gluten free bread or spend millions of dollars on these gluten free snacks. Part of the issue is that you want to take food as it comes from nature. And so a lot of the gluten products are also sprayed with glyphosate. And so when we're looking at kind of the pesticide and extra toxin burden that's on our body, then this is the reason why we're taking them away. Now, a lot of my patients have a lot of gut dysfunction, and a lot of times as a functional doctor, we think about your gut health as being the foundation of how we actually cure some of these inflammatory problems. So by taking away the two biggest gut triggers or inflammatory mediators, the big two are gluten and dairy. And so we purposely took them out and made the recipes fine. They still taste delicious, but it will give you a new perspective that taking it away, honestly, if you end up adding it back at the end, you will actually potentially find that you have symptoms that you never had before because you never took it away for long enough. But a 28-day period is enough time for an elimination diet.
Tell me about the dairy piece.
Yes. So dairy, oftentimes, though they're not injected with hormones, a lot of these cows are constantly in this breastfed state. They're constantly being milked. It's not like we're in Costa Rica where you're just milking it a couple times a day. There's some question as to whether grass-fed cheeses are okay, and grass-fed milks. I typically think that it's more inflammatory when we look at kind of skin conditions and mucous membrane conditions where people have a lot of sinus problems. They have acne. They have the keratosis pilaris, which is that
Yes.
little bumpy marks on their arm. We often see that there's a correlation with dairy and definitely with eczema. So it can be inflammatory. I think it's best to just, if we're doing this, we might as well make it whole food based, take away the two biggest potential gut inflammatory mediators, and then see how it goes. But after you're done with this process, you could test whether or not you actually have a reaction to it or like picking the better sources. Nobody really needs to drink milk. What I would say is if you want to try a little bit of grass-fed cheese or like grass-fed goat cheese or feta or something like that, then you can try a little bit on the day after day 29. You can try that a few times in that first day and then mark your symptoms for the next 4 days. If it really doesn't bother you, then that might be something that you can add back. I just don't see a lot of value in adding in gluten back on a regular basis. Now, with that said, we had life happen, right? You're going to go to a wedding, you're going to go to a party. So you will end up getting some of this stuff back in your diet. But I purposely make it a point that if I have control of the diet, we're going to eat whole food based. And then those aberrations will not throw you into a tizzy if you end up doing it every once in a while.
Yeah. So Penn, my husband, has asthma. And life happens. You go to a party, whatever. He takes in dairy, a very cheesy something. He needs his inhaler more the next day. His lungs, you can hear him almost filling. And he didn't even realize that was an issue until we took dairy completely out.
And it usually takes about 21 days for people to actually have a reaction or understand that correlation, because you'll ask people, oh, well, have you noticed this? And they're like, no, but that actually could be one of the main causes of why you're constipated even, right? And so until you actually take it away, I think that it's better to just keep it clean, take it out. And then if it's something that you want to try to add back at the end, you can do that, but you definitely need to mark your symptoms. So that may be where you use the self check-in sheet after you added back doing dairy 3 times in that first day. Over the next 4 days, what kind of reaction do you have?
You have a very realistic view of the world, meaning, we're going to go on vacation and we're going to go to parties and we're going to celebrate. But what's your philosophy on that and how to work this within the real world?
Well, and also, I think what I would like to mention is that you may start this program and you may completely fail one night. People fail. It is okay. Part of the mistakes actually teaches you what are ways that I can kind of prevent this from happening again. Or if it happens, life happens, and then you just clean it up the next day. So none of this will get undone. So as we go through this process, you may feel like, oh my goodness, if I just messed up a day, I'm just going to quit. There's no benefit to doing that. You can just reset, just restart it. Now on vacation, some of the things that I do are, if I'm not hungry, it's not that I can't go into that social setting. So I can sit there and I can drink my coffee while other people are eating. Now, if I'm hungry, then I'll eat breakfast. But I also think about maybe switching my window. So especially if I'm on an adults trip and we don't have to worry about the kids as much, we often may eat later at that time. So then I kind of pre-plan, oh, well, we're actually going to be eating later. Then I think we probably our first meal will be kind of around this time frame or when we're hungry. So you can move that window either early or late, like we talked about. Same thing on vacation.
Okay. In this Well Body Reset, we have given you a 28-day plan. There are leftovers, and we are reheating leftovers for lunch the next day, even some dinner. and dinner portions as well. The goal of that is just to keep it simple to ensure success. I know I can't physically cook. I can't cook 7 days a week. That's not realistic. So there's reheating in this. But I feel like that has kept me that just ensures success for me.
Yeah. And it's also to be easy and it's also to save money. So frankly, when people fast, what we find is all the crap that's actually prepackaged, all the processed stuff, that costs more money than real food. So when people talk about the fact that real food costs more, I would disagree. Especially you can use frozen vegetables. Now, frozen vegetables are usually caught at harvest and they're during their peak season. You can use that if your fresh vegetables are not as accessible. But a lot of these vegetables that we've mentioned even are not really that perishable. Like cauliflower can stay in the fridge for a while. Kale can stay in the fridge. So lots of times you actually will find that you'll build in time. So we're going to give you a grocery list every week. And so with that grocery list, you will kind of know what you're going to be shopping for. And then you're really going to kind of stick to the list and hopefully not stray. And that's going to save you money in the long run. And then again, in the morning, I can get out the door in 10 minutes because I just grab my Pyrex. So after dinner, we have our glass container storage. I just go ahead and divvy it up into different sections. And then what I do is I just grab that and go. So it is way easy. And this is really, it makes it more simple so that you don't have to, it takes the guesswork out of what am I going to eat for lunch or am I going to go out to lunch and completely sabotage potentially because of where people want to eat for lunch that day.
Okay, our next video is all about the self-assessment tool, how to use it and why it's so important.